might be wondering, why am I standing here with an alternator in my hand? Well, the answer is simple. I took it out. Well, I had to take it out because it has a problem. For that I had to remove the wheel, jack up the car and crawl under there to get it out. If you're interested in how to get it out and get it back in, no worries, we will show you how to get it back in. Now, it has a problem. The problem is that whenever I start the car or the van, the alternator doesn't produce any electricity. Then the computer revs up the engine speed in order to try and start it, but that doesn't work either. Not good, guys. I have to push the throttle just a little bit in order to start the alternator, and then it works fine. Now it has been a problem for the last year and a half or so. I got sick of this problem, so I decided to take it out and investigate it. Back to the lab.
This alternator is not the original one. It's from 2017, so it has been replaced in the past. I have to keep in mind that this might be the wrong alternator for this car. It does mention Iveco. While the engine itself is indeed from Iveco, the car is actually a Citroen, made by Fiat.
We have the patient on the bench here, back in the lab. Let's go over the problem again. The problem is, whenever the engine starts running, the alternator is not putting out any electricity, so it's not putting out 13-14 volts like it should do. It will only do so when I rev the engine a little bit, and then it starts putting out a steady 14.4 volts, as it should. From the moment it starts generating electricity after revving the engine a little bit, after raising the RPM, the alternator does its job and it works perfectly. So there is a problem with the startup cycle. Now, to know how an alternator works, I found this schematic. It's not especially for this one, so there could be some small differences, but I think it is quite accurate. But this is all nice theory. We don't have to worry too much about the whole schematic because it's all contained within the voltage regulator, which sits right here under this plastic cover. So I don't think I can open it up, or at least I'm not supposed to open it up. The good news is that this part costs 20 euros approximately. The whole alternator costs about 140, 150 euros at this moment. So I think if we measure all the coils and we make sure that there is nothing wrong with the big chunky copper coils inside, we might get away with replacing the voltage regulator. So that's the whole circuit, more or less, that is mentioned here. And hopefully we can get it to work properly again. Now, before we open it up, I'm gonna measure the resistance between the D plus pin and the case. It can be useful later on. We have 1.37 kilo ohms. I got a guy on the Fiat forum who tells me his alternator, but it's in a Fiat Punto, measures 1.5 kilo ohms. So we are in the right ballpark. I'm gonna admit that I did loosen these bolts before I brought this home because I don't have all the right tools here. This is more like an electronics lab, so I don't have, like, this is not the best. Socket is better. So this is actually B2 plus. This is where actually the plus cable comes that will go to your battery. So with that out of the way, we can remove this screw. And take this cover off. Now we have a clear view of the alternator, and these are the three windings or coils that are mentioned here. I am going to measure the resistance between them. So they are not connected to ground, but they are connected to each other. Let's put this into view. I think we have a light so you can follow. See, this should be very low. Okay, so we're getting 0.1 ohm. Even 0. That's weird. .1. Now I do know these are not shorted because otherwise the alternator wouldn't work. Depending on where I measure, I get different results. 0.2, 0.3. So I according to the people online, this is indeed quite low. So I don't think this specific multimeter is up for the task. Okay, and off comes the regulator. And the thing you immediately notice is the brushes here. These are what brings the voltage regulator into contact with the rotor, the shaft in the middle, and feeds the field coil with the needed voltage. You can see these brushes are starting to get worn, but not too bad if you put them in. You can see here I can feel some resistance, so there's definitely good contact. These can be the cause for problems. I'll show you how it looks on the inside. So the shaft spins around continuously, and the brushes they conduct the electricity, and so it can regulate this field coil.
A quick recap on the inner workings of an alternator. The field coil, the most left black rectangle on the schematic, is magnetized using the regulator and brushes and rotates within the three stator coils, shown right of the field coil. This generates a three-phase AC signal that is rectified using diodes, shown on the right, and sent to the battery.
The field coil should be around 3 ohms. So let's see if we can get a reading. .7. I think that's close enough. Since we'll replace it, we can at least look what's going on in here. It's getting really soft. Yes. This is really interesting. I've never seen anything like this before.
I put the IC under my microscope, and while it's interesting to look at, there is not much we can do here. I honestly expected some old school analog circuit here, but this is clearly a dead end.
In order to test the working of the rest of the alternator, I got my USB oscilloscope hooked up to my computer. I connected it to one of the windings here and to the casing. Now when I spin it by hand, There we go. We can see the sine wave. Wait for it because it's quite slow. The time scale is not perfect, but you can definitely see the sine wave. Now let's hook it up to another coil. This is just noise. Let's wait for it. There we go. Nice sine wave to last one. There we go. Again, just noise. Wait for it. I think I just missed it. There we go. So the coils seem to be working fine. And suddenly, it's 10 days later. I ordered a new voltage regulator because, yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure if that is the problem, but I'm not doing all the work and put it back in, and to trial and error I decided to just replace it. I waited for 10 days, thanks Autodoc, for an Hitachi replacement voltage regulator. And we're gonna install it on the alternator. You already know the drill, right? Go. My camera has the wobblies again, I'm sorry. The brushes are not really worn. Huh. Well, if anybody knows how to test the voltage regulator, please let me know and I will happily test the old one. There we go, it does fit. That's a relief, you never know. I can get there. Okay. Now the part that I hate, crawling under this. See, I used 2 supports. I don't want to die, well, at least not this way. And we need to get it. Here is just above the steering rack. And in order to get it out, according to the manual, you need to remove like a cover from the steering rack, but I found that you can actually get it in here at the muffler, lift it over the suspension, and then you can get it to its final destination. Oh, why am I using that word? Right there, and you see in the middle there is a hole for a bolt, and that's where it goes. And then we have the belt and the cables we need to secure it to. Alright, let's get to it. So I need to get this part here, and the bottom bolt, the top bolt goes here. And here we have the belt that goes around with, on the left you can see the belt tensioner. Okay, wiggly wiggly, get this into place. So I finally managed, after some swearing, to get the top bolt in, and this is the last time that I said that installation is easier than removal. Okay, so I managed to get one bolt half in, and then we need to get this over that, and it's on two sides because then a big bolt goes through from the inside like this. Yep, so we'll have to wiggle it into place now, and then hopefully yeah, we can get it done. And sorry, I don't know really what to say. You have to basically get this straight, and then everything will fall into place. But that's really hard to film while you do it. Sorry, especially on the other side there I can only feel it. I think this little thing I just tapped out needs to be out of the way for it to go in. Okay, success. I was right. So the little bush or bushing in one of the holes of the alternator has a little bushing. You need to tap it to the outside of the alternator, and then it fits into place. Almost, as you can see. I still need to realign the top bolt, but I guess this will work out. Now I'm tightening the top bolt, but it's really not fun. You don't have a lot of space for the ratchet, let alone a power tool. But we'll get there, So in order to torque this bolt, the bolt, the bottom bolt of the alternator, let's call it this way, you need a 50mm socket on this side, and then you need to stick a 17mm socket in the other side, or it will just spin around. And of course we torque it by the nut, not by the bolt. And after this we can do the electrical connections. The funny thing is that the B+ connection, the thick wire, already snapped into place. I swear I didn't touch it. It already went over the terminal. So that's easy. And then we still need to apply some force on the belt tensioner. That's quite tight. Difficult to reach to get the belt back on. And then we can finally test. I hope this works. I'm gonna be really disappointed if it doesn't, because this was really a lot of work. So the B+ connection is just a 13mm socket with a self-locking nut, and D+ is just a regular connector that snaps on, easy peasy. Now in order to get to the belt tensioner you need like a really short socket, and then you can my fingers. Push. I think we almost got it. You can see it's not completely on. This is not good, so I'll have to give it another push, and then hopefully we can get it on perfectly. There we go, everything back into place. The two bolts are back there. The B+ is connected, the D+ is connected, the belt is back on. I reckon we can try and start the engine now. Not good, guys. With 11 volts. So unfortunately the problem is worse now. Now even revving the engine doesn't start the alternator anymore. Well, I better go and check all the connections again. So guys, I took a shower to clear my mind for a moment, because as I predicted, I'm quite bummed out that this didn't fix the alternator's problem. It made it worse actually. Also the battery light came on, finally. I should have done that earlier. But the fact that
Hi, this is future GP from the editing room, the van. I decided to edit this part out and summarize what happened. So we started with a working alternator that failed to start at a normal RPM of 750. It needed a little nudge. I needed to give it a little bit of throttle and then it would start. So we then replaced the regulator with a new one. Now this one won't start the alternator at all. And this time the battery warning light on the dashboard comes on. That wasn't the case with the old regulator. Now the starting of an alternator happens through the D+ terminal or lamp terminal. This signals the regulator that the ignition is on and the alternator should power the field coil in order to start it. When the alternator is running, a 12-volt signal is put on the terminal by the regulator and tells the computer, hey, everything is fine. Now, this circuit used to be a simple lamp, the battery warning symbol on the dashboard. When you turn on the ignition, current would flow from the battery through the lamp into the field coil. And then when the alternator started generating, 12 volt would appear on the terminal and the lamp would go out. And you, as a driver, you would know that the alternator was running fine because the light goes out. Now, this old method works on this new regulator, as I will show in the next clip, but it doesn't take the computer low current signal. So the car, it doesn't have the old circuit anymore. It has a computer that tells the D+ like, hey, power on, but this is a very low current signal. It's the signal itself is not enough to power the field coil. The regulator should then take its power from the B+ and power the field coil. So I believe this new regulator is not meant to be used with this low current signal coming from the computer, the so-called body control module. It's the wrong one. And yes, this stuff used to be much simpler back in the day. I'm back at it with more multimeters, more testing. So I followed the tip online from some older generation car guys to use a lamp, and I did manage to start the alternator with the lamp by connecting it between, this is the battery positive, so 12 volts, and the D+ wire, and then the light briefly lights up and then it goes out, meaning that the alternator is running. So this is actually the old way of telling the driver if the battery is charging or not. So light on means the D+ is taking power and the alternator is not working. And if the light goes out, that means that the alternator is putting out 14 volts and there is no differential voltage, so the light goes out. It's basic electricity. But I'm not gonna film everything I'm trying to do. That will take us too far. I'll just film when I find something useful. Okay, bad news, I'm afraid. I think it's still the alternator, because it will start if I give it 12 volts in D+ wire. But I found out that the BCM pin, the computer's pin, can only supply 30 milliamps, which is a normal amount of current for a microcontroller, but it's not enough to start the alternator. So either I bought the wrong regulator or there is something wrong with the alternator. I really thoroughly checked all the wiring. I even ran a complete separate wire from the alternator to the computer, but the results stayed the same. So no problem with the wiring, everything's fine there. So I guess the alternator has to come out again. So I'm not going to film the whole process again. Basically, we'll give the belt some slack, take off that bolt and the bottom bolt, and then the cables on the back, and then we can lift it over the suspension
to the exhaust, and there it can come out again. So here we are again. Actually, if you've done it before, it's not that hard. This is the only irritating bolt to get out because it takes a long time, because you have no place to move. You see now, we don't. I'll have to do this by hand now. Some wrist training then, I guess. Okay, that wasn't too hard to get back out. Well, I guess I'm going to remove the regulator so I can measure the difference with the old one. Okay, look at this mess. Okay, glued the regulator back together with some epoxy that I still had lying around. I think this is the strongest stuff you can get to bond something and put it back in the alternator, and then we're gonna move it back into the car. And I have some help this time to help me fit the alternator in the correct place. So I've refitted the old regulator because I thought, yeah, at least we can rev the engine a bit and have power. It's better than having nothing, because it's been in this state for too long now. So I've connected the multimeter to the battery, and let's crank it up, see if it went back to the original state. It's fixed now. I don't know. The new regulator obviously didn't work. I then checked all the wiring very thoroughly. Maybe I did fix something in the process, maybe a bad connection somewhere.
Aqui. Aqui.
Good day. When you're seeing this, it has been a week since I worked on the alternator, and this part just arrived. As you can see, this number is not the one that I ordered, but it should be fully compatible with the old part. I also did some measurements on it, and I do measure a diode or transistor, something with a forward bias voltage of 1.6 volt, and this is not what I'm measuring on the Hitachi part, so that gives me a bit of confidence that it might work. So let's get the vehicle up in the air, take the wheel off, and have a look. By the way, the paint is really terrible here, so we'll still have to take care of that before we leave, because really I don't like this. Triple security, so time to go under and have a look. Alright, I managed to get the old regulator out. I will show you in a bit how it looks like. The only thing you need is like a short screwdriver or a ratchet with a Phillips head on it, because you have like 10 centimeters of space. Here we are. As you can see, it's not too bad. I do advise you to put some tape around the B+, because it gives some nasty sparks if you touch the chassis by accident. And Now let's get the new one up there. Some concentration juice before putting it all together and reflect on life of placing regulators for the... Wait, I took it off, I put a new one on, that didn't work, I took it off again, I put the old one on, now I'm taking the old one off again and I'm putting another new one on it and I'm hoping it will work. So, is that the definition of madness? So, everything connected, multimeter on the plus on the battery, so not the D plus but the actual battery. Uh-oh. Doesn't start. It's revving. 1000 RPM. Ah. Just kicked in. Okay. So I'm letting the engine run behind me for a bit. The alternator now starts on its own, but the car still revs its engine still a bit. So I guess we'll wait, because last time it was fixed after reconnecting the old voltage regulator until the next day. Then it didn't work anymore. So we'll let this sit for a night and then we'll see if it still has the same behavior. Then I think I am satisfied. I would love it if the alternator starts when the engine starts, but I guess in the end I will have to replace the whole alternator sooner or later. Getting some help from my little princess. So I like to torque the wheels before you're fully on the ground. 150 Newton meters. Hey, it's future GP again, and I'm standing here in Sweden. So I did film this episode approximately 1 month ago, and in the meantime we've reached Sweden with this thing. I have to say that the alternator still works like I tested it, so it does work, although the engine has to rev up a little bit before it kicks in. That happens about 95% of the time. Well, sometimes it doesn't work and I still have to rev the engine. I have to say the new alternator really makes a difference, but I think the alternator also suffers from the electric breakdown. So that's a fancy word for it's getting old. So next time I'm having troubles with the alternator, I'm probably just gonna replace it entirely. But I have to say, I learned a thing or two about alternators, so that's always nice. But I have to admit that this problem really drove me nuts, and it actually still drives me nuts because I'm not 100% sure what is going on. Anyway, if you're watching this and you know what is going on, please let me know. But as I said, so far so good. The alternator does its job. That's the most important part. I did spend a lot of time on this. In any case, thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. In the future, there's gonna be more car stuff about this van and the Volvo, you know, from the previous episode. I think the next episode will be about polishing the paint of this van. And yeah, see you next time.